Many of you have been involved in some sort of fundraiser. Maybe when you were a child, it was a lemonade stand, or you were in the Scouts and you sold candy or cookies, or maybe in high school, you were in school sports or activities group and you did car washes to raise some money. Winston Churchill once said, "You make a living by what you get. You make a life by what you give." Dr. Brennan, fellow classmates, today I'm going to tell you about the legendary life of Terry Fox, the ultimate fundraiser. First, I will tell you about who Terry Fox is and what led him to become on this adventure that will live in Canadian infamy. Second, I will tell you about his marathon of hope. And finally, I will share with you the rich legacy that Terry has left for all of us. Terry was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and shortly after his birth in 1958, his family moved over to British Columbia, where they still live today. And Terry's rise through the school ranks was interesting in that when he got into high school, he loved basketball, and he tried out for the team as a junior in high school and was the last person taken. And you know how many minutes he played that whole season? 1. And his best friend, Doug Allward, was Player of the Year, most valuable player on his team. So all summer long, Terry bugged Doug about, "Help me with this, I want to be better, I want to be better." And Doug finally gave in and helped him a little bit. But he could see how Terry's determination was then. And the next year, his senior year, Terry was the most valuable player on the team, even over his friend Doug. And also, he was on the All-Star team, and he was a co-captain of the team. The team liked him so much, they loved his determination. Terry went on to Simon Fraser University, and he got in an automobile accident, and he hurt his knee. And he didn't think much of it, it hurt, and he got home, and the next few days it hurt bad, but he was okay. He got up and was able to do some things. But the fourth day, he laid in bed, he could not move. So he told his parents, and they took him into the doctor, and the diagnosis was he had osteosarcoma, which in layman's terms is cancer of the bone. So they set up to do surgery and amputate Terry's leg at the knee, and the night before the surgery, he was real despondent. He was hardly talking to his family, he was really upset. And the night before the surgery, his high school coach came in with a magazine and showed him of a fellow who had had a prosthetic leg and had run the New York City Marathon. Well, this really psyched Terry up, and he wanted to, he said, "If that guy can do that, I can certainly do it." So he was all ready for the surgery, all ready to get over it and get going forward. So he had the surgery done, went to chemotherapy, and he was in chemotherapy for 16 months, and during that time, he saw how all the children that had that same kind of osteosarcoma were passing away right in front of his eyes. And he said, "I better do something for these kids." And when his family thought he was going to run a marathon, he decided he's going to do a little something else. He's going to run to make money for cancer research. He's going to run across Canada on his prosthetic leg. Now, can you imagine running across Canada on something like this? Was one of your legs? His mom, Betty, was quoted in a documentary on ESPN entitled "Against the Wind," which aired in 2012, as saying, she asked Terry, "Why can't you just run across British Columbia?" And Terry responded, "Because people in British Columbia aren't the only people who get cancer." "I couldn't argue with him more," she replied. So Terry finished his chemotherapy, and he went out to start working on that leg, working on how to run on a prosthetic leg. And he called his coach back and he said, "Will you meet me down the track? I want to try to run on this thing." So he said it was like running on air, but the coach met him down there, and Terry would run and fall down. He'd run again and fall down, and pretty soon this lady showed up and came running across the field, a soccer mom, and she was there with her kids playing soccer, and she goes to the coach, "Will you get that freak out of here? He's scaring the kids." Well, back in 1980 or so, you know, a prosthetic leg wasn't the norm. People thought those people were freaks back then and abnormal. We know better now. So Terry decided to do this run, and he finally had his family's blessing, and he wrote to some companies for some sponsorship, and Adidas told him they'd give him all the shoes he needed for it, and Imperial Oil of Canada told him he could have all the fuel for his vehicle, but he thought, wait a minute, we don't even have a vehicle, because he's going to take his friend Doug with him, and Doug's going to drive the van ahead and mark off his miles and everything, and so Ford came through and gave him a brand new van to do it, and off Doug and Terry were, and they lived in this van 143 days, the two of them. And you can imagine what the inside of that van was like. So Terry starts off in St. John's, Newfoundland, and he puts his prosthetic leg into the Atlantic Ocean, and he turns west and starts his run. Well, he's kind of despondent at first because he's running and he's maybe getting a couple dollars handed to him here or there through the eastern provinces, and finally in New Brunswick, the mayor of New Brunswick meets him out on the road and gives him a check for $10,000, which is the amount of people that are in that city in New Brunswick. So he got $1 for every citizen in the city. So Terry thought, wait a minute, that's a good idea. I'm going to try to raise $1 for every Canadian. And that was, at the time, 24 million people. So he's running through, gets to Ottawa, and he's running through Ottawa, and the people there are crazy. They're actually running him off the road. They're stopping, asking him if they need to ride. You know, they don't know what's going on. They just see this guy, he looks like he's crippled, and they think maybe he needs a ride, so he kept getting people stopping, asking him if he needed a ride. And so Terry didn't know what to do. In Ottawa, he made like $55 after 4 days of running marathons. He was running a marathon a day. And so he finally got to Quebec and Montreal, and the Canadian Cancer Society sent one of their new people, Bill Viggers, out there to meet him, and Bill said, I got the good idea, I will get ahead of you and tell people you're coming. So by the time he got to Ontario, 10,000 people were there to meet him in the town square, and in that one day he went through Toronto, he raised $100,000. So he thought, hey, this idea might work, I might be able to get $1 for every Canadian. So Terry's approaching Thunder Bay, Ontario, and there he started coughing really bad, and he got out one morning and ran 20 miles. He was doing pretty good, and then he started running a little farther, and he started really coughing bad, and his heart started hurting. And so he finally peeled off on his run and told Doug to get him to a doctor, and he was forced to end his marathon of hope on September 1st in Thunder Bay after he'd run 3,339 miles in 43 days. He got into the doctor sent him right to the hospital, and they found 2 tumors on each side of his lungs. The cancer had spread to his lungs. One the size of a golf ball on each side, and the other the size of a lemon on each side, and he was running with that. So you can tell what kind of competitive spirit this guy had. He was not going to quit for those children. That's all he thought about were the children. And Leslie Scribner writes in her book, Terry, his story, Terry ran with an unusual gait, as he was required to hop step on his good leg due to the extra time the springs in his artificial leg required to reset after each step. He found the running painful as the additional pressure he had to place on both his good leg and his stump led to bone bruises, blisters, and intense pain. Terry found that after about 20 minutes of each run, he crossed a pain threshold and the run became much easier. So, Terry's in the hospital, and he's having chemo. He's done with the run. He's back in chemo. So the following night, the CBC, which is Canadian Broadcasting Company, runs a telethon, and they raise $10 million that night. And in February of the following year, $24.1 million were raised, realizing Terry's dream of $1 for each Canadian. In the meantime, Terry, during his recovery this time, was honored by the country of Canada as its youngest recipient of the Canadian Companion to the Order of Canada, which is the highest honor a civilian can get in Canada. Terry died before dawn on June 28, 1981, after slipping into a coma. It was his favorite time of the day to run. As reported in the St. Petersburg Evening Independent, June 29, 1981, Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau was quoted as saying, "Canadians mourn the passing of a young man whose courage and awesome determination inspired this country as no one else has ever done." And Canada has honored Terry Fox since he passed away. He says, "I just wish people would realize that anything's possible." Well, everything is. He was minted on the $1 coin, which he's the first person in Canadian history to be minted on a coin in Canada. He was also put on a stamp, and he also has monuments at Mile Zero in St. John's, Newfoundland, and a monument with a statue in Thunder Bay, Ontario, marking Mile 3339. Terry says, "Even if I don't finish, we need others to continue. It's got to keep going." Well, it has kept going, as of today, his brother and his mother started the Terry Fox Foundation. As of today, they have raised $600 million in climbing for cancer research. And the Terry Fox Run is run every year now, still, and it's spread over 60 countries and 9,000 races a year in Terry's name. And the Terry Fox Foundation's website says, Terry insisted that the runs not be sponsored and that they were to be non-competitive. There were to be no winners or losers, and anyone who participated could run, walk, or ride. We all live our lives by what inspires us. Today I have shared with you the story of an athlete, fundraiser, and humanitarian, Terry Fox. I touched on his life before and during his initial bout with cancer, his marathon of hope, and finally, the rich legacy that he leaves for all of us. What inspires me are the people you run across in life that think about others before themselves. The people who strive to make a difference in their lives. That's why I have this picture above my desk at home. Whenever I think about taking a day off, or maybe taking a shortcut, all I have to do is see this picture. And below the picture it says, "Today, we got up at 4 a.m. As usual, it was tough." Maybe Terry says it right here when he says, "You don't have to do what I did. Wait until you lose a leg or get some awful disease before you can take the time to find out what kind of stuff you are made of. Start now." Thank you so much for letting me share the story of Terry Fox, the ultimate fundraiser. Thank you.